Pause champ? Oh! Let's go! Oh! 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 Holy! Oh! It's first time legend? Yes, sir! For RTA at least. In any case, right? I don't want to stall any longer than necessary. I am rank, I want to say 99, but technically I think I'm the last man in legend. So before this account analysis begins, I want you guys to keep in mind, okay? There's a few things this season, right? One, it is known we had a lot of balancing issues, right? You know, with the release of like Lilias, Peira, Rand, Iseria, right? Ida buffs, like very aggressive style comps were left unchecked for a long time, right? So this was, for most of the season, very aggro favored. Whereas for me, right, I'm a very standard player, right? So trying to adjust to that was most of the season. All right, and without further ado, this is my account review for my legend account, ValKyreia. I'm not gonna lie, highest CP hero drafted grand total of 0 times tonight. I built her as a anti-Hwayoung tech, ended up not coming out. This is supposed to be my Hwayoung killer, but generally speaking, there are other ways I like to play around her. I like to draft double mitigation. I like to draft attack downs. I like to draft attack up strips. There are a lot of ways for me to get around that hero. Yeah, everybody has an opener, right? So the entire last day, if you played standard, the standard draft almost entirely consisted of this. It was like, all right, I will take one between Lilias and Peira, and we shake hands, and then the draft begins. So overall, she didn't do too much, but I think for her stat line, she's going to sufficiently be able to stop a Hwayoung. I specifically calculated my damage against my own Hwayoung, and this is something you need to know about Kise, right? If Hwayoung has any type of mitigation, right, you will not kill her. And if it's a slightly higher defense Hwayoung, my stat line does not kill her, even with pen set. And I tried putting on Gab, will not kill. If you Gab, you have to soul burn an S1 to kill. Right, so this Kise ultimately ended up being kind of a dud. It held some pretty high end gear, so not too much used. RB, so I always like to have a giga high damage RB built to pants grab cleavers who don't draft any protection and there's no BBK, right? And this build, I would say, sporadically worked out super well for me throughout the season, but going into last day, didn't really do much. Mostly just because last day people like to play slow, so I was the more aggressive one, which is pretty weird. I would say the damage is pretty okay. If he comes back, he's gonna kill some things. If he gabs, he's really gonna kill some things. Hand guy. Not even fully Mola, mind you. I think I drafted him a grand total of maybe like 3 to like maybe 6 times, right? This guy just keeps me in there. A lot of times when somebody goes hand guy plus a bunch of natural speed units, right? You need a really good solution to just be able to dunk on them. And one of the things you want to do is like, you want to be able to outspeed hand guy, you rip an S3, you do a whole chunk of damage, and you call it a day. I've actually lost quite a bit of game to this because I play a lot of hand guy myself, and I play a lot of hand guy plus like natural speed units, so it's kind of a big issue for me. So this was one of those picks that was really good when he came out, but really wasn't a super staple part of my draft. Milim. So one thing you might notice about the Milim is my Milim looks giga scuffed compared to how I usually have her. And that's actually part of my macro strategy, right? So I think I've said this before, which is like, if all season I just advertise, I'm like, oh, I have the most cracked Milim in the world. I have the most cracked Opsig in the world. But last week I just nerfed the fuck out of them and put their gear on heroes I'm going to pick more. Everybody's going to respect ban my Milim, right? I don't think I drafted her a single times, like on the last day, but I think leading up to the last day when I had to pull this Milim out, I remember like against like Lakari, also against a few other players, right? They just respect ban the Milim. Up next, Green Vildred. This is one of those picks that kind of came in clutch. Back when Cleave was a lot more prevalent, heading towards the end of the season. Don't think I drafted him last day, which I think is understandable because like last day, the meta usually slows down a lot. So for me, I don't think a lot of people were like looking to pick him to speed contest me, right? But during the season, especially when that like light cleave that he did with Ran and Flan, right? and he used a green Vildred to not only DPS but to imprint those units. When I recognize those cleaves, I can take like Peira plus I use Peira plus C Lilias, and I imprinted my own team with the green Vildred, right? Basically, the moment you recognize that draft, you can steal the green Vildred, right? This is something I used against Rawls a lot. I think like if people were to spam one draft, right, especially if people are going to be light clones, this is definitely one of those picks you just steal away from the cleavers and you speed contest them back. All right, Summertime Iseria. So this is one of those picks that kind of died with a patch. I don't think you pick her super often. So one of the texts I had for her was that she has a hot swappable build, right? Because if you guys know, I've very recently got into customizable keyboards, and one of the things that Kami taught me is how you can hot swap things. And one of the things that I do is, depending on whether I feel like people are just tanking down to tank your damage, or if they're pulling out res cleansers, right, I will hot swap my builds, just depending on what I feel like most people are doing, what the meta is, right? She's one of those heroes with a hot swappable build. And I think like if you have an account similar to mine where you have a lot of gear, you don't have a lot of extreme static gear, it's mostly good mid-range gear with good gear score, this is one of the like techs you can pick up. But I think post-patch, this hero's been pretty dead, but there's one draft that I'm gonna be talking about that has like that runs the Iseria decently often. This pick, I could not fucking wait to talk about, because we are back to Landy frogging, at least for a good while. I'm about to give a lot more info, but some of this might be like very advanced, very like combo heavy. But hey, you know, as long as I've helped out, that makes me happy. So enjoy, welcome along for the ride, man. Yeah, right now, right, if you guys remember, last season, I played a very standard, very tanky Landy, very high gear score, right? And what happened at the end of the season? I boomed to Rimuru because you can't pick Landy into Rimuru. Rimuru steals your buffs, and it kind of equalizes all the tempo you pick up. Now, the reverse is happening. The moment you see a Rimuru, you can Landy cleave someone, right? This is Landy plus 2 books, right? If you guys remember, 2 books, Pavel, like back in season 4 was a huge terror. Right now you can slam Landy plus 2 books. You build your Landy to basically survive a Rimuru pants grab. I parsed that against my own Rimuru's damage, made sure my Landy will survive against my Rimuru. I soul burn, I S3 twice. Boom, Rimuru team dead. If you can ban their FCC, that's even better. If not, like, there's a lot of ways you can trap draft their team. Monday through Thursday, you could very easily Landy cleave people, and it was very fast and it was very clean. Today, a lot of people knew about the Landy cleave, and the Landy, like if you commit a Rimuru and they Landy cleave you, right? For example, Hwayoung figured out this draft where all they had to do was put a carrot right next to his Rimuru, and if I soul burn my Landy, I got the extra turn, I got the carrot burn, I would just die. Up next, I think this hero is literally a fucking god. Like, this is a god and a half in one hero. She's so good. She could be comboed literally to any support in the game right now, and she could just completely fuck up a lot of ways defense is played in the meta. Hey, at this speed, she's kind of speed tuned to about like 302, 305-ish initiators, right? And when you have her on board, there's a lot of heroes she beats. She's able to stall out an A Ravi. She's able to push back Hand Guy, Designer Lilibet, FCC, Hwayoung. She has a decent matchup against Rimuru. Her skill nullifier keeps her alive against Green Violet. If you're looking to play aggro, this is probably the best 5th pick in the game. I cannot think, like, when I'm looking at an opponent who's trying to tank down and I have 5th pick, most of the time I just tell myself, we eat at this. And I think like giving her premium gear was one of the moves that really made my matchups take off today. I cannot sing enough praises for this hero. This is one of like the best heroes. But if she comes out any earlier, then you kind of give your opponent an inkling on how to play defense against you. So that is a problem. Overall though, I would definitely say, like, if you have an Ida, congrats. Like, she's an absolute monster in aggro. All right, up next, Briar with Iseria. This is one of those heroes that I really love playing during the season, but towards the end of the season, I think the more serious I got towards playing, the more limited usage I started seeing, right? Because if your opponent plays very aggressively and they don't have a strip, they don't have ways to crowd control you, she has a lot of counterplay against things like Rimuru. She has a lot of counterplays against things like even like Charles Cleave, Emma Violet, Green Violet. She has a great matchup against them, right? But as you get to the end of the season, right, you start to notice one thing, which is that people will play a lot slower. People are more willing and inclined to tank down. So there are probably like 1 or 2 games today that she really did work. But other than that, it's really hard to like convey value with her. So up next, this is one of my MVP candidates, and this is one of the builds I haven't changed for about a full season now. And I can very safely say, after playing last day with this hero, I was even scared because it looked like ML Cermia was a hard counter to this build, because the moment you proc a dual attack, ML Cermia will activate for free. But yo, this hero clutched me out a few games through them dual attacks. Like, you know that like made the other guy mold. Some of those wins, some of those games you should not be winning, absolutely, like, it was so clutch from Specter Tenebria. If I wasn't simping hard enough for Unity set before, I'm simping hard for it now. Like, it is absolutely insane. This is one of the MVP candidates for today. But like, let me make this clear, right? If you're intent on farming a Unity set for her, I didn't intend on building a Unity Stene, but this is like 82 gear score, and this is like 76 or 77 gear score. This entire build is 457 gear score. Like, this is as capped out as my account can be. Any chance I had, I would pick this hero, and unless she died turn 1 to some really chunky AoE, she was almost guaranteed to convey value with this. Up next, Damage Politis. A lot of you guys already know this about me. I keep 2 Politises around. I keep a Damage Politis and I keep a Degenerate Politis, right? And I would say, like, Damage Politis is really good if you know how to use her already. And that's something Wind Demon taught me this season, right? Wind Demon's like, you draft Damage Politis here. Just trust in the damage, right? She has an insane matchup into see Lilias. Even if you're just, if you get tagged with attack down, right? The S2, S3 is so much damage. She's insane into hand guy, right? When your opponent picks a hand guy with like a Steny or something, you draft this and you just tell your opponent, press that S3, dude. I fucking dare you. I will kill your entire team if you press that S3. You like hand guy? Pick your fucking hand guy. I will kill and murder your entire team. This Politis is on point. Like, Wind Demon and Sturby made me absolutely believe in Damage Politis. But that being said, right, if you guys aren't used to picking Politis, right, build yourself one of these and learn to play her. Learn when is a good time to draft her, and learn when's a good time to not have to draft her. This is one of those picks where I don't think I've seen her a single time on the last day. I think she's just too fair of a hero. She's not broken in any way. She has very clearly defined like strengths and weaknesses. But she's definitely draftable. I think earlier in the week, I picked her a few times because I actually kind of like her build right now. But as is, like, I don't think she fits into my playstyle as well. Obsig. So a lot of you guys see my older Obsig stats. You'll know this Obsig is kind of nerfed by a lot. I think she's really hard to draft. This is like the definition of a crab hero. Wind Demon's told me this multiple times, and it took me until the last week to really like grasp what Wind Demon meant, which is basically a lot of times against FCC, if you draft Operator Sigret, you put yourself in a 50-50. If you win the 50-50, you win the game. If you lose the 50-50, you boom. But what you can do is you draft a hero that is good when there's no FCC, like Ida. And then you ban their FCC and you call it a fucking day. I wanted to make sure she was geared as a tech against Hwayoung. Let me just say, if you don't gab against a Hwayoung, you do not kill a Hwayoung. It feels pretty bad to pick her into Hwayoung. So in the end, I ended up not picking her at all. Why not Portrait? Because when you're playing against FCC, she puts up 4 buffs for you, which is 28% chance for you to gab, which is a lot more damage than Portrait, right? And if they have any amount of immunities at all, that's another 28% chance, right? And if you're playing against like a Rylot, that's another additional buff, right? Because if they have an FCC and you draft this as one of your openers, she literally eats the enemy team alive, right? If you gab, you get a free kill, and then you can put the bombs on better targets when you S3. But towards the end of the season, Iseria stopped being good, so I think this hero definitely lost a lot of stonks. Next, F10. Honestly, that's just a gear holder. The fact that she can carry a book means she can enable combos. I don't know if I talked to you guys, like, some of you guys might have been here for this, right? But she's basically a gear holder for my for my Judge Kise, right? They have very similar base stats, so you can kind of trade their gear back and forth. And like, if I ever use one against somebody, I can trade their gear and then they can immediately swap their jobs. BBK, okay. I didn't have a Wind Rider for her, so she's just on this thing. But overall, she kind of comes out when I face against Cleave and they don't have any type of buff strip. This basically gives you a really good comeback unit versus Cleave. Or when I'm cleaving myself and the enemy defense doesn't have any strip, this is a very strong unit. She just drops a lot of damage and her S3 can't be countered, which is really fucking nice for Cleave. ER BBK good. It's good circumstantially and it's very expensive to build. Celine, let me be the first to say, if you watch my Celine video for like when I review the buff notes, I overrated the fuck out of Celine. I thought she was gonna be absolutely insane. Zero does nothing. I don't think I lost a single game to her I don't think I drafted her a single time. I don't think I lost a single game to her. You can always play around her. She's not great, dude. Actually, no, I take that back. I think earlier in the week, I lost a lot to Celine. Not like a lot, but like when she comes out, it was a little bit RNG to have to play against her, right? Maybe with one DPS that like a Celine can kill. Every time I drop in a non-attacking skill, there is a 75% chance this Celine is gonna whip. I take these chances. She just doesn't feel consistent enough, right? If you take the highest attack EE, she's way too easy to play around with stuff like Hwayoung Politis. If you take the stealth EE, she just feels like she's way too RNG, right? You know what you draft instead? Draft one of these, right? Why kill one of their guys when you can kill 4 of their guys? You tell me. Okay, this next one's a pretty big one. You might notice from my stream, she took a pretty considerable upgrade. This is easily one of the best heroes in the game. Now that I've actually like got somewhere significant playing this hero, I can finally say like, yo, this hero's actually fucking busted. She only needs 3 stats. She needs attack, speed, and a little bit of defense, and she needs nothing else. That's the only reason you can jam her to over 7k attack. She's not kind of busted. Let me just say this, she's fucking insane. The fact that they dropped her 2.5 days before RTA ended, after saying, oh, we're no longer gonna release meta shifting heroes before season ends, guys. Well, that was a fucking lie. Anytime I see APOC Ravi, I slam. Anytime I see Designer Lilibet, I slam. Anytime I see Green Violet, I slam. Does she need immunity set? Not really, but it's nice. Remnant Violet, last week, I actually picked this a fair amount. Handful of times, this is one of my picks into like Lionheart Cermia, but I think going into last day, I ended up not picking him at all. He's a last week tech, but not a last day tech, if you kind of catch my drift. This is one of those units where I think his damage is still high enough. One shot a lot of things, especially like Lionheart Cermia, but I know going to last day, he was most likely going just to die into Hwayoung, so I didn't want to draft him. I feel like he's a very bad last day hero because he's too RNG. I agree with Malicus. Like last day, you never want to rely on too much RNG, unless you are really on your back foot and you're like, fuck, I need a win. Let's draft Green Violet or Remnant Violet. This is my quintessential aggro Rimuru. Because if you go like with the triple set, very tanky 185 speed Rimuru, a lot of times you just kind of lag behind people's stennies. You lag behind people's like Designer Lilibet, ML Cermia, and you don't want to do that. So for me, I like playing him at like 220 plus. And for me, I just aim for a good amount of baseline bulk, right? You run Draco Plate, you run very high damage, and you just run it down. This didn't get drafted. So this is pretty interesting. I wanted to make sure I jammed as much damage and speed as I could. But that put me in a position where I'm missing crit. And since Iseria wasn't super necessary, I just basically played this guy like he's like a 307A Cidd that could hit in an AoE. So I think I had him a handful of drafts, right? And it went down like this. A lot of times I pick Stenny Hwayoung. A lot of people will try to pick a Kise and Kawerik, right? On 4 and 5. And if you have one of these and you have a different speed contester, for example, I always trade out a Peira, right? So I'm running him and Peira, and this becomes a forced ban. Because otherwise, I will kill your Kawerik, and there's a pretty good chance, right? If I don't miss crit, I will kill your Kise as well. Yeah, so I'm not missing as much crit as like the build suggests. Sometimes we'll still lose to it. Most of the times he came out tonight, he was banned. I don't actually think I got to press buttons on Ran a single time tonight. As far as I can remember, if I pulled out a Ran, he was good enough to be banned on the spot. ML Cermia, when she was first released, right, the meta was still very cleave heavy. It was considered kind of bad because it was a very aggressive and cleave centric meta. Like, especially after, you know, the designer Lilibet buffs, right? Cleave kind of like slowed down a lot, right? Aggro became decently popular, and especially towards last week, I would say the meta slows down quite a bit, right? People like to play slower, they like to play safer, right? They want to be more consistent. And one of the things when the game slows down is at some point in the game, somebody is going to fucking dual attack. And when that happens, this hero is going to pop off. But outside of those specific interactions, she's a very good counterpick into ML Cermia. Literally, one of the things she's basically the reason why I'm so comfortable giving my opponent ML Lilias on a silver platter. This guy, I think throughout this season, it's been one of my most important heroes, right? I will die on this hill as this is the best build for him. This is as Wind Demon will call it, your Minister of Defense. Anytime you're getting cleaved and you're like, oh no, I need to initiate the defenses, this is gonna be your Minister of Defense. Last day, I think I picked him like twice, and he was banned both times. And oh my god, he's so strong, right? So whenever you're getting damage cleaved, you park an A Ravi behind this, and the A Ravi will never die. And if you're getting Iseria cleaved, you park a Maid Chole behind this, right? And the Maid Chole, if you build her Giga High Res with, you know, Bastion of Hope, you will never get bombed, and you will never die. Okay. This is just a gear holder, not really picked. This was like a pick against Ran, but Ran isn't really a hero right now. You just play Designer Lilibet. Designer Lilibet is so strong. This is probably one of the 7 great disasters. Specifically, the build change for me was pushing his speed up by like 13 from when I used to play him. And the entire idea is now he's speed tuned to playing with my Landy. So if I Landy cleave people, he initiates for every single one of my aggro heroes that don't attack buff themselves. This is an A Cidd. Not the greatest A Cidd, let me admit that. But I would say if you're close to 300 speed, he's still usable at a legend level if you know what you're racing. I drafted him exactly 1 time tonight, and I beat one of the people I respect the most in the community. I'll just let this draft speak for itself. I knew I was racing a unit that was most likely slower than mine, and I mean, we take those. That's all I can say. Artifact Manica of Control. So this is a Vinny tech, right? Essentially what it is that it lets you jam speed at the cost of like 15 crit. This gives you better hit chance into things like Green Violet and Remnant Violet, anything that has evasion. And what this can do is it can help mitigate some matchups where you're trying to play aggressive and then they pivot defensive. Okay, this is one of those units that used to be really insane, but after like injury Bellion, injury, you know, with Ravi having injury on S1, and then with like Bad Cat Armin coming out, there's just more injury, right? He gets shit on really hard by injury, but because I play a style where I pre-ban Bellion, and I first pick, like, I very early take an A Ravi, right? And if you have a Ravi, you pick Stenny like I do, very, very proactively, this is still one of the best knights because there's not that much injury in the game you have to fight against. So this should be like everybody's, if you have one of these, this should be everybody's like 3rd or 4th Minister of Defense. If you know you're getting cleaved, you just take one of these boys. He will tank down, he will CR push, and when necessary, he does the clap clap, and your enemy goes to sleep. Yeah, whenever this unit's drafted against Kana, you can hear the panic in his voice. Is 143 ER enough usually? Not really, but I have a secret tech. This is called the hot swap tech again, right? I kept a separate copy of Bastion of Hope just in case if I have to pick him a lot today and I'm getting like effectiveness diffed, right? I can hot swap into a Bastion of Hope. So this is another one of those like hot swap techs. Definitely one of those things I recommend. Some Terrace tech. Hey man, some people just want to play Epic 7, and if you get cleaved, you don't get to play Epic 7. Maid Chole. So pick 0 times today, but Usually very solid into Iseria cleave. Very high res, you slap it on a Bastion of Hope as well, right? If you, depending on how confident you feel, you can run self-imprint or team imprint. And when necessary, you give the enemy Ye Olde Hammer, and all of your units get cleansed for 2 debuffs, and if they're dead, they come back to life. This guy, I don't think he's a minister of defense, but you definitely pick him when you're playing defensive. Yeah, here's the thing, right? Like, I don't like playing 99 crit builds on the last day, but I prioritize them so low. I'm like, fuck it. I really could care less. So we just went with this. I think he came out like maybe twice today, and both times was like, I don't know what to pick here. I need to play defense. And it was this, and it was like one time he won, one time he didn't. I don't think he needs like the most premium gear, but I think right now you definitely go higher HP, just because like if you go not enough HP, you will die to a Hwayoung, even if she misses, right? So you try to jam a little bit of HP if you can. This Emilia is huge for me last day. If you're like me and you own Hand Guy, and the other guy takes Hand Guy because you don't pre-ban heroes you own, right? Heroes you play a lot. You need an Emilia to counter Hand Guy, because Hand Guys tend to go like, what, 255, 260? If he goes, you want the Emilia to go if he attack breaks your unit, or if you know, like the 255 Hand Guy goes, and then his like next DPS is like 240 something speed because of speed tuning. This way it gives you room to pull up a unit and then kind of have a little bit of counterplay against Hand Guy. And I think a lot of people can like probably attest by that. Emilia has been absolutely like popping off on the last day. LRK, so I have him conceptually as a aggro team mitigator, but I didn't really pick him that much. Mostly just because Peira kind of did the job of being an aggro team mitigator. And most of the time, I highly prioritize Peira. Other people prioritize Cidd Lilias, and I kind of made a playstyle out of giving people Cidd Lilias so I can play Peira. Judge Kise, I like this build quite a bit. I think she came out like twice a day. All that matters is when people pick Hand Guy, Rimuru, Designer Lilibet, Apoc Ravi, you just reset the fuck out of them, right? You can remove up to 3 turns from those heroes, and when you do, they're basically useless, right? Hand Guy doesn't do too much without cooldowns. He can't even cleanse his own debuffs when he has no cooldowns. Rimuru does literally nothing with no cooldowns. Designer Lilibet does pretty close to nothing with no cooldowns, and like the only person out of that entire like lineup, which is actually a pretty common team to be drafting, right, on last day, is like Apoc Ravi, and she can swing decently hard with no cooldowns. Cidd Lilias, she used to be 299 speed. She's a little bit nerfed right now because she had to kind of take a hand-me-down from Hand Guy. Mostly just because I wanted my Hand Guy to be speed tuned to my Landy. I basically gave her away for free on the last day, and I don't think there was too many problems. Ruele, I think she came out one time today, and she absolutely did her job. So Ruele, your go button for Ruele is when the enemy picks a lot of single target nukers and you need a lot of bodies to protect high priority targets, right? So I would say she's okay-ish into Hwayoung if you know how to play around it, but otherwise into stuff like Apoc Rimuru, she's probably slightly better in. Previously she was on a higher gear score build, but the build looked kind of bad, so I kind of gave her a real build. No like res set or anything, but she's on some pretty like nice HP set gear, and I don't think anybody else uses that really. Carrot, very high attack, mid speed, a little bit of effectiveness. Bulk is like okay-ish. I think most of the time, I don't think I drafted her last day, but last week she's very valuable into things like Rimuru, Steny, right? Those are like still very popular heroes, and she has very good matchups versus them. Watcher, this is just a cleave nuker and you carry Sash, which is super valuable. I don't think I play him in RTA, but in Arena, I play him a good amount depending on what I need, and obviously he's a speed imprint. He's a speed imprint with attack buff that kills almost anything, and he could Sash, which is highly valuable if you're trying to connect your teams together. This is a unit that I've almost dropped entirely. I've picked her maybe a handful of times today, mostly just because the moment Hwayoung came out, I'm like, this is not a unit anymore. You just get a picker for free, right? You ban their mitigation, you get a picker for free, and you have a very resilient carry behind that. Yeah, I think like in a world where Hwayoung exists, if you want to play APOC Ravi, like, this is okay, but you basically have to hide her behind an FCC, otherwise she just dies way too easily. You have to be very selective about how you draft her. And protecting against a Hwayoung is a lot harder than protecting against a LQC. So she lost a lot of power. Yeah, I think this is still a solid A Ravi. She could still be played pretty strongly into standard, but now she has definitely more counters, right? And that's always going to be a problem. Before, if you just watched out for LQCs, right? You attack, break an LQC, you reset the cooldown for an LQC, you nuke an LQC, right? Now you have to defend your APOC Ravi against Hwayoung, and now this is a world where APOC Ravi is no longer like a super top tier premier pick, right? And that's just something you have to be aware of. I think she's still very strong. The S3 is insane, right? You could swing for a lot of damage, huge tempo swings all game. This hero, I had big hopes for her, but I don't think she's like super, how do I say this? She's a really good last pick, depending on what your opponent picks and if you already have a well-rounded team, right? So if you play very standard, I actually think she's solid, but because I'm playing so aggressive right now, I think she slows down my team too much by not doing damage or buffing attack. AOL, I picked her 0 times grand total because I tend to just want to go for damage, right? So these two heroes kind of fill a similar role depending on the matchup. And I think she does her job. I picked her a good amount of times leading into the last day, and last day I was just looking to kill people. So like the control type heroes, I didn't really pick much. But I think if you play a lot of standard, right? These like control type heroes could help really equalize matchups. So for example, Solitaria equalizes your matchups against focus heroes, right? And AOL equalizes your matchups against like buffers and heroes that put up buffs. Killing people is a crime? Well, thankfully, I'm not committing the killing. It's my kick mommy that's committing that. I'm not gonna lie, guys. So I only lock PvP heroes for RTA. I should probably lock them because, not gonna lie, this was originally a joke build, but this build actually did work. I think on 2 to 3 separate occasions against cleavers who do not have high effectiveness strips. The moment you like get your immortality, right, and you can reset your S3, yo, this boy is it's about to pop off on cleavers. I'm gonna BBK instead, because I play BBK and cleave sometimes. So BBK needs to have real damage. Going next. So DN, not played at all, but this is my stat line. Okay, I know a lot of people was asking for this. This is my build. Let me just say, at a legend level, you lose a lot of races at 99%. I really wish I was running the 310 build. Basically, we run this to loop her S3. It's kind of important. And on top of that, you just give her your fastest gear with high effectiveness. The most optimal setup for this hero, right? On your right side is defense, effectiveness, and speed. And I'm kind of lucky I have top speed on defense and I have top speed on effectiveness. Yeah, and the other thing you really want to hone in on, I really want to hone in on, is it's actually hell important to have effectiveness on her. Right, I used to think like having effectiveness on cleave initiators wasn't too important until I realized one thing. If you have good effectiveness, you can stun check people's Emilias. You can stun check things with a good amount of res on them. Right, if somebody plays a degen Politis into you, you can stun check that. If somebody plays a degen Emilia into you, you can stun check that. So having good effectiveness on her is actually hella important. And that's one of those things on release I kind of didn't like connect with her on. Not afraid of Violet into Peira? No, I never died to Violet. Well, I still get Violet solo sometimes, right? If I get super unlucky, and it's happened today. I'm not gonna like hide that. But most of the time, right? I draft something like Stenny, I draft something like Politis, gives me enough chances to overcome a Violet. She's one of the best units with Hwayoung, and Handguy is the second best unit with Hwayoung, right? You draft them together, you take Hwayoung Stenny, like, it feels so strong. Unless I get cleaved into standard, into tank down, into degen, Hwayoung Stenny, I almost feel like I'm unbeatable. And that is one of my core drafts, right? Her Handguy or Emilia Hwayoung Steny, and then 1 flex pick. Whether if I need a tank down, that's FCC. If I need a third DPS, right? If I need a combo DPS, right? Both of these heroes can enable an Ida, right? Think about it. I can S3 to pull up an Ida. Hand guy can S3 to pull up an Ida, right? There's a lot of ways you can enable these heroes, right? If they have a Rimuru, I can pick Landy, and then with Steny, right? I can soulburn my Rimuru to cleave a Rimuru team. LQC. My LQC is on speed boots. So the fact that she's not on attack boots kind of make her stats a little bit skewed towards high crit damage, lower attack. Lower attack kind of gets mitigated by the Hellcutter. But overall, like, the damage should still come out to about the same when you slam it on someone. What you do lack though is you kind of lack a little bit of the splash damage. Ultimately speaking, this build is used to kill Designer Lilibet and Apoc Ravis. And I think that's like the most important thing. When they have mitigation, you need attack plus a little bit more stacks on your Hellcutter and to guarantee your kill. Moving on, FCC. I play aggro, so my FCC needs to do damage, right? This FCC is kind of like, I would say, it's not like the most craziest unique build, but this FCC is very geared towards how my account works, because my main playstyle is aggro. And when I cannot play aggro, I slow back down to standard. So the standard FCC kind of needs about 200 speed and 30k HP, and you know, about okay amount of defense, right? But to play aggro for an FCC, you kind of need at least 85 crits, so that when she crits, she slams pretty fucking hard, especially scaling from 30k HP, right? From what I've seen, this FCC will, if I press S3, can chunk a Specter Tenebria by about half HP, depending on the Specter Tenebria and whether or not there's mitigation. So this FCC actually lets me play very aggressively, even when I'm in a standard comp. And if you're like me, where your main style is between aggro and standard, I think having an FCC like this is very premium. Although having an LRK is pretty good as well. This is a Wind Demon special. Basically, I completely copy Wind Demon's build with, I think, a little bit less HP. So like I covered earlier, right? Wind Demon is probably like the best Designer Lilibet picker, at least on global, if not on the entirety of the ladder, right? To the point where Designer Lilibet is pre-banned against Wind Demon. And there's a very special Wind Demon draft, and I'll get to it when I'm done going through the units. But what it basically is that if you're playing against a Cidd Lilias and you're playing against a Peira, she completes half of a pinch where they're not allowed to press buttons. If a Peira presses S2, you're gonna push 40%. If a Cidd Lilias press S3 and then takes another turn, you're gonna push 40%. And in a meta where a lot of people are dropping immunity, you can reset things by a turn. That's an incredibly powerful skill to have, especially with a defense buff. Against squishier heroes, you just chunk the living fuck out of them. So after that, I have General Purgus. So this is actually a PvP build. He's literally only an option against Charles cleavers, and I think he's banned a lot of the times, which I kind of hate. Wait, I've been picking him with an 85 boot. Oh shit. All right, you know what? He's gonna run that for at least the entire off season. That's fine. I think I picked this one time in the entirety of final week. I feel like her spot in the meta kind of been usurped by Peira. Not only does like most things Crimson Armin does, but better. Like Crimson Armin can't give attack buff. Crimson Armin can't like check things that a speed contester can. Crimson Armin, I guess like the S1 is kind of the same because you provoke instead of a stun, which is essentially the same thing. So I think I like picked her one time the entirety of last week to cope for the fact that I couldn't get Peira or FCC. My Archdemon is not good at all. She's still on an 85 neck. I don't like to pick heroes where I pick the hero and I pray until I win, right? So she's kind of on copium gear, so it's whatever, it works. Everyone's seen the ADS special. Yeah, if you watch like me try to aggro people down on the reg, I've been soloed by this hero more than my fair share of amount of times. DJ and RB, I don't think I picked them last week, but if you want to build your own, this is basically a budget rem. Any counters for ADCs? So if you have to play against ADCs, I recommend picking assassins. Especially coming out of the jungle, assassins are really strong. I don't know, man. Somebody asked me about ADCs. I had to give my like true and honest response. I'm just saying. Okay, let's talk about this pick. I'm a permanent Bellion pre-banner, but I think this is the best way to play her because right now against aggression, this is easily the best build. So for any aggro players out there that unleash the Bellion, you are a braver man than I, because I can tell you guys, I picked her exactly one time today when I was getting cleaved by light. I think I'll just let the screenshot speak for itself. So let me paint a picture for you guys, okay? My Peira passes. My hand got S3s. I don't even remember what happened, but the Iseria went, she AoEs. My Bellion's counters once. All of his unit besides the Dilibet is at half HP. The Politis goes, drops an AoE on me, Bellion procs again, and kills everything besides the Dilibet. This unit will actually kill an entire cleave team in 2 fucking hits if you build her like this. Let the other guy kill themselves on your team. She's nice. I think this came out one time last week against a Maid Chole picker who shall remain unnamed. You just build him high HP, high defense, mid speed. He'll do the job. All right, this is one of those picks I really want to talk about. You know how everybody likes hand guy, but you don't have hand guy? So this is what I would call a dollar store hand guy. She's amazing at being a dollar store hand guy because unlike, so the only difference I would say instead of immunity and attack is you get speed and attack. And speed buff is pretty nice sometimes. Instead of being able to give your team barrier, she heals your team when you kill a guy. Kind of nice. She has 2 distinct weaknesses compared to hand guy though. One, she's only good for like 3 turns, and she has 1 off turn where she's extremely weak. 2, she even with a dock bag, she only cleanses 1 debuff. I would say like last day I didn't pick her too much, but last week, the entirety of the week is like, if I'm trying to play an aggro playstyle, because of her base stats, she could actually be built pretty fast with high res, and you don't need her to be pretty tanky, right? You're decently like Cidd proof, and then I would say like the best usage for her, which thanks again to Wind Demon, is in Guild War, where you can run her into Cidd Lilias, where Cidd Lilias will press her buttons at you on auto, and nothing will happen to you here. And then you slam your S3 and all the debuffs go away. And then the other, I guess the thing where she's better than a hand guy is like the S1s are really good because if you're playing a Landy or Stenny, you're just pulling a super high value target. Fire Charlotte. I don't really draft her, but I think I pick her a lot in the regular season, especially against people who cleave me with green units. This is one of my favorite builds. I think I boomed with her a little bit because she's one of my comfort picks, but I really like her when the enemy overcommits on AoEs and they have really squishy AoE units. Definitely one of those units if I'm like mentally booming and I just need ways to defend against AoE and counter attack against AoE, I pick her a lot. And I think her stat line is pretty nice, especially for a lifesteal SSB. The attack is high, bulk is good enough, and the crit damage is pretty decent as well. Roana doesn't really require like insane gear. If you just have one, she's a hero. Bro, I actually picked this today. I think I'm a little bit slow on this build, and she's a little bit squishy. But the whole idea with her is that when your enemy drafts a comp where, let's say their first 4 units, right? This is very good versus tank down teams, right? And when I say tank down teams, I mean units that play like, you know, teams that play around like 180 speed to 190 speed average. And usually in those drafts, you know, a player would take like a support, a knight, and then maybe like a second support unit, right? And then they would, by their 4th pick, they would take like 1 DPS. And you know you can tank down against that 1 DPS, and that 1 DPS is not going to out-tempo your team. You pick up an Acades and you ban their last pick, 100%. And she almost always will carry your team from that position. She actually does quite a bit of work. The reason why I like her on ER is because she just does a lot of work with ER, although I think she needs to be a little bit faster here. Yeah, you basically pick her into like, you know, enemies who overcommit on supports, mitigators, and control heroes, right? And that's why I think the ER is very necessary. Shadow Knight Phyllis. I didn't pick her last day, but last week I tried her out a few times in slower drafts, right? Against stuff like ADS, Bellion, Ram. She's pretty decent. The crazy part is I'm not even fully ruined yet. So I'm missing a lot of utility from her. So I made sure not to pick her last day, because when I'm playing like very seriously, I don't like picking units that aren't fully fleshed out. Still a very high tier unit if you're looking to play very defensive against other players who have a lot of like counterattack and extra attacks. She's really good into Sea Lilies and Billy. I think this is probably my last PvP hero. We can still go through everything else underneath, but I think the Rem is my last PvP hero. My Rem is no longer on an immunity set for 2 reasons, right? One, Iseria cleave is like no longer super threatening as like a meta playstyle. So I wanted to see how much tankier and how much more damage I could squeeze her on, basically when I don't use immunity. And on a crit set, it just seems like I could go up 2k HP for free, and I'm like, yo, we take that, right? And if I'm fighting against a Rimuru, not having an immunity is actually a benefit to me, because when she Iron Maces back, you don't let the Rimuru pants grab you, right? So that's really good. And then the other thing is, like, most of the time for Rem, if she doesn't demon mode, she's not really a real hero anyway. So I just prefer like having her on a more stat heavy stat stick set over immunity. I think that's like literally every single PvP hero I have for this season, especially coming into this last week.
Hey big boys, thank you for the watch. If you like video, be sure to drop the like and subscribe. It really helped Uncle Valk out. If you want to catch any of the moment, be sure to follow me at Twitter.tv/Uncle Valk. Also, catch me hang out with friend in the Discord, link in description for now. I catch you big boy later. See ya.